Welcome back to another episode of the Heatio Home Energy Show. On this show, we always talk about ways in which you can save money on your energy bills. So I'm delighted to say that I have Jim Bennett on the show today, Sales Director for Octopus Energy, one of the largest energy suppliers in the UK. So welcome to the show, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about Jim. Before we get into Octopus, I've known you for a short period of time and it's been an absolute delight. So tell me a little bit about Jim and his journey.
So it's quite interesting. I came to the whole renewables sort of mission piece quite late in life. I started out selling beer, worked as a beer salesman and did some marketing around that stuff. The peak point being when Bass was sponsoring all the sporting events, the Carling Premiership, that sort of stuff. So sort of classically FMCG sales trained. I then went into the world of consultancy, reorganised Sainsbury's stores was one of the projects I did. Then travelled around the world with my family for a year, wrote a book about it, which no one's ever read for good reason. And then joined a technology business and set up a technology business that 18 years later I was lucky enough to sell. And then I took a bit of a pause and decided what do I want to do. And I wanted to make sure the next choice for work was something with a bit of a higher purpose and a mission. So I saw Octopus, which has got a fantastic heart on its sleeve green mission. And I thought to myself, that could be a really interesting business that's going to take off. And so I joined them and set up initially the solar business, which is now run by a colleague. And now I look after all things sales for heat pumps, which has boomed recently. And it's really good fun, really good fun.
You should have brought your book on. It's Graham Hendrick. Every show he comes on, he brings a copy of his book.
Trust me, my own family won't read it, so I really don't want to be telling anybody else about it. But anyway, yeah, so there's a bit of that. And originally heralded from the northeast of England, but now I live in York.
Fantastic. And so landed in Octopus Energy. You weren't in energy before then?
No. So it was new. Obviously, I knew sales, and the brief was, we have invested 20, 30 million in heat pumps. We built this big R&D centre down in Slough. You've probably seen it. It's got the houses built inside that represent, the housing stock, and it's got a whole load of test labs down there. And we got that piece. We had engineers and we had a very small sales pipeline, but the brief was, we've got all these engineers, you need to get them busy. Can you work with the team to develop a really easy to use sales process? Because everything that Octopus does is all around the customer. We try to see the world through the customer's eyes. So it had to be simple.
So Octopus founded in 2016, now one of the largest energy suppliers in the country.
Yeah.
The rise of the business as a whole, and now more recently diversifying into solar and into heat pumps. I mean, Greg Jackson to me now is, and I think to a lot in the energy sector, he's like my Elon Musk. This is the guy I aspire to be. I think the way he's come into this industry, he's disrupted it. And certainly from a heat pump perspective, an industry that's very close to my heart from the time I've been in it. And I've seen the way that Octopus have changed that. But they've changed the landscape for energy as a whole. So maybe before we get into the heat pump part of it, what is Octopus's mission? What's driving the scale of this change and the speed at which this change is coming in?
I think if you look at our strapline, which is greener, cleaner energy, that mission that everybody who works for Octopus really believes, the higher purpose is to do something about the green energy transition and to do something about climate change. We all know climate change is real. You look at Storm Bennett that's around and these freak weather events, we've got to do something. And I think Greg had a very, very clear vision of what he wanted to do. But because he's also he had a clear economic model of how he wanted to move, he said, we want to do three things. If you imagine three pins on a plug, that you plug into the wall, we want to generate renewable energy. We want to sell renewable energy to the customer and do it cheaply and easily, and raise the bar, because the customer service bar was quite low in the energy industry. Really want to raise that bar. And the third thing is home electrification, which is where I fit in, is putting solar in, putting heat pumps in, getting people into EV cars. And if you look at the CO2 contribution of a household, 31% comes from household heating, and another 27% comes from your car. So 58% of the CO2 can be addressed just by sorting out home heating. And then the clever bit is he's used technology, which is one of the big reasons, because my previous company was a technology business. They've used technology to bring it all together. Kraken to raise the bar of customer experience, and also crack and flex to manage multiple devices across a network, which I know is something very interesting that you guys are doing with Heatio, which is how we ended up chatting. And as a result of which, it's that focus on the customer has meant we're now number 2 in the market.
It's incredible.
It's the speed and the scale, but the way they've managed to do it is very well funded, with people who want to ethically invest. And then the second piece is a really tight group of people who are held together beyond just going to work. We've all worked in places with good cultures. This has got a fantastic culture. And as a result, it enables you to scale, and it enables people to make decisions without having to seek advice because they just know roughly what's the right trajectory. So a lot of things have come together, but it wasn't by chance. Greg is a very bright guy, and he's helped pull that lot into what is Octopus today, which is huge.
Mega exciting, and an amazing team. I've met a few of the guys in and around you as well, and so let's talk about this. I think the announcement that went out a few weeks back when we saw the Octopus heat pump coming out, to me, and I have kind of followed this journey for some time, to see Octopus bringing out their own heat pump. That's got to be a game changer.
It's really, really interesting. We had quite busy in the land of sales, heat pump sales currently. To put it into context, I think it was September the 11th we launched the Cosy 6 Octopus heat pump. And then the week after, Rishi Sunak announced the extra 50% funding on the grant, the BUS, the Boiler Upgrade Scheme grant, to £7,500. And we got, in September, 25,000 people asking, can I have a heat pump, please? And they often say, do you want to be good in business or do you want to be lucky? And I want to be both. We launched the online journey, which is the ability for customers to log on, get a fixed price quote for their home. They put in their address, they get a fixed price quote there and then, which we hold, and pay their £500 advance payment, which meant those 25,000 people could go into that online journey. And we've now got upwards of 20,000 quotes out there of customers who want to move through and get a heat pump. And it's like a perfect storm. And the piece about Cosy, the Cosy 6 that's coming out, 6 kilowatts, clue in the title, is, we want greener, cleaner energy, or greener, cheaper energy. We want to bring the price down. So we currently sell Daikin heat pumps, which are fantastic, by the way, and we'll continue to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to try and, wherever possible, use the production of our own heat pump to bring the price down for the consumer, because we can do it because we're a one-stop shop. Tie it into a tariff so that the run costs are lower, and suddenly you can start to change the game. So it's really, really exciting.
And that is we talk about some of the challenges, and we've discussed them at length on this show, that customers have in obtaining a heat pump, especially when the comparison is a combi boiler, and 80% of homes have a combi boiler. So when you start to address those capital costs and the affordability of having a heat pump, the grant obviously goes a huge way towards that. But what other things are Octopus doing to address to bring down that cost?
I think there's a few things. One is the vertical integration of creating our own heat pump. There's some very clever stuff that comes with that. One, it's built with installers in mind, so it's easier to install. Yeah, so it's got sort of modular componentry, so it's much easier to plug together. That should help reduce the install time. We're also doing stuff, if you imagine, the old Formula One analogy, where you look at each step in a process and try and speed it up, delivering some of the heat pump already pre-assembled. So, the first day on a job, you're there going through all the inventory and seeing what's been delivered and counting it all off against the delivery note to see what you've got. We're now getting stuff that comes in a pod that's actually already, some of the stuff is pre-assembled. So some of the, around the heat pump itself and the core fittings. So that saves you time. So we're looking at the end-to-end process and trying to speed up install, but keeping quality in mind, because you've got to make sure that, the thing works at the end of the day. I think the other bit that we're doing is we're also looking at, the actual process of buying the heat pump. It can be very complicated. One of the big benefits, I think, of what the government has done is, the 7.5K is a simple scheme. It's easy to get your head around, which I think is quite good. But the MCS piece, where they've almost put this standard in place that is sort of a seal of quality that says if you are an MCS installer and you're approved by MCS, you're going to get it installed at a certain level of quality. We've been looking at how do you gather the information through the journey such that when you come to install, everyone knows exactly what they need to do. They're not sort of scrabbling around to understand what the spec is. They've got a single design. So I think that's another piece of the jigsaw. And then the other piece, of course, is run costs. Octopus is sort of a one-stop shop because you can get your tariffs. We've got the Cosy tariff, specialist tariffs, which means that if you can optimize how you utilize the heat pump, you can get the run costs down. So there's kind of capital costs up front, and then there's the run costs, and then there's the actual labor costs, the install costs. And we're looking at all aspects of that. And as you get scale, because that's what we need to get to, scale as an industry, we can share that best practice and hopefully everybody can benefit.
And that must be, I mean, one of the big things that certainly I've seen is the recruitment drive around installers. That you mentioned there about the labor costs. Is that part of the strategy, bringing as many of those services in-house so you have control over those? Yeah,
so one of the things we pride ourselves on is it's the, I'm just thinking we're in Liverpool Rock, if that's a thing. It's probably Southport Rock around here. But wherever you cut through the rock, it says Southport. Everybody that touches the process will be Octopus. So your surveyor is Octopus, the salesperson you speak to. We have a team called the Install Support Team who take you all the way through to install. They help you with planning permission, all that stuff, and sorting out any contractors for readiness work. They're also Octopus, as are the installers, as are the service engineers. So everybody works for Octopus from end to end. And we do that deliberately so you get the same quality of service and you don't get over the fence management. Yeah, you all own the issue, the customer issue, on behalf of the end-to-end supply chain. Now, we tried some different models. Yeah, and we tried lots of different things about, could you outsource some of this? And we thought about it, but we want that quality to be there. But it's taken a big investment. We've spent 50 million so far in building our heat pump capability, wow. Which is a big investment for the future. But our goal is to create a market and to be able to get rid of that 31% of CO2 that's kicked into the atmosphere through heating. But the good thing with Octopus is we don't want to keep any of that stuff to ourselves. And we work with companies like, I don't know if you know Clayton Brown from CB Heating.
He's coming on the show in a couple of weeks.
He's a fantastic guy. He's been in the industry a long while. We've shared leads, we've shared knowledge between us about how you get stuff done, because we've got to get the whole market to raise the game in order to be able to satisfy the demand that's coming, because it is coming.
Yeah.
And there's no time for being sort of parochial and keeping some of that stuff to yourself. So,
I mean, you're at a point now where with the boiler upgrade scheme and all those metrics and all those measures that you're putting in place to address those capital costs, you're at a point now where, I mean, I'm not saying this is every case, but I've certainly seen quotes where your fixed price, and you said it is fixed, belongs, as long as the survey doesn't chuck anything up that's completely out of the ordinary. I've seen quotes from Octopus now at £500 for a full system installation.
Yep.
Is that the limit? I mean, Greg, when he came out and talked about this heat pump, is
Greg, and this we've got to remember. Greg came on the stage before Rishi had added the extra £2,500 on and said, for some people, for simple standard installs, the Cosy 6 will be free. Right, and that
was when it was at 5.
And that's when it was at 5, right? And you're absolutely right. We are putting, there are quotes going out, and there's some going out that you don't pay anything. It's covered by the £7,500. And I think the bit that you've got to sort of go back to is, and this is the bit I brought in, how many things do you buy that cost thousands of pounds where you don't know what it's going to cost up front? And we were asking customers to sign up. We'll come out in a month's time and do your survey for you, and assuming your house is suitable, we'll then give you a price and you can see whether you want one or not.
Yeah.
And that survey is a really expensive cost. So we span the whole thing round with some clever data science. We've now got some data scientists who predict based on your housing type, and if you've got an EPC, we look at that as well, and it predicts what your price should be based off your house size and your water and heating usage, and we give you the fixed price cost. So you now get a price up front. For some people, they look at it and go, well, that's just not for me. But suddenly you've got a price. Who thought knowing the price would allow you to buy it? Then you pay a £500 advance, which is fully refundable up until the day before your install, which even now I think to myself, it's incredibly generous. Literally you've got all the stuff in your warehouse and they can still cancel. That's fine. We go out and do the survey, and no matter what we find at survey, full repipe is about the only exception. But whatever you find at the survey, we hold the fixed price cost. And to give you an idea, the the average price of a heat pump through the vouchers that have been redeemed through BUS is £5,665. So that's after the £7,500. It's 5,665. Prices are absolutely tumbling. Even from when I started a couple of years ago, the prices have been coming down from 10 grand to 8 to 7. There was the well-publicised BG Octopus 2,999. All of our prices, nearly all of them, are less than that average. Most of them are in the 2.5K range, and there's a lot going out at nothing, £250, £500, because of the generous BUS grant.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And the big bit for me, and this is the trick the industry's got to pull, and hopefully by creating some scale in the market, we can get us there. It used to be you'd wake up in the morning and say, do I want to do the right thing by my pocket, or do I want to do the right thing by the environment? And you had to make a choice, because if you want to do the right thing by the environment, which a lot of people do, you had to pay more money. Now, you can pay less than a boiler. The average boiler's 4K to put in. I looked at Checker Trade on the way here. Gas boiler's 4K all up. Oil boiler about 4.7, and we're at 2.5K. So you can now do the right thing for the environment and the right thing for your pocket, and that's when it becomes mass market.
Yeah,
because people will just say, I can have it. I can have the best of both worlds.
I'm going to ask you the elephant in the room question.
Okay, cool.
So when I first seen it, I think it was within the days shortly after Rishi Sunak announced the increase in the boiler upgrade scheme, and I saw my first Octopus quote at £500. And I have to be honest, that when I seen it, I applauded it, because I have for times championed that installation prices needed to come down, whether it was going to be done through more installers entering the market, manufacturers dropping the cost of the equipment, or a combination of both, but it needed to change. And I don't blame any installer who's profited from making installations and doing installations during this time. But naturally, as with anything, you make hay where the sun shines, and then you've got to move on. So when I first seen that, I thought, right, this is it. This is going to start seeing, the decarbonisation of our homes. More people putting heat pumps in at £500, and I put a post up on my social media, and all of a sudden the walls started to clamber. Yeah. And the first thing is, and it would be great to hear where you're at with this. The first thing is when engineers are seeing this, no doubt the points they make are fueled by the fact that they're probably quoting a lot more for the same installation and don't have the same opportunities that Octopus have in terms of the scale. But the most common point that was made at £500 an installation is, you can't be doing a very good job. To install it for £500, an £8,000 all-in installation, can't be doing it. So what's Octopus's position? I think
it's I've seen it too. I'm in a number of groups online where I look at sort of the sentiment, and the viewpoint is, at that sort of price, you must be doing some sort of shoddy job. There's a few things. One, MCS won't let you. If you look at our Trustpilot score, over 150,000 scores are at 4.7, which allows us to rate at 5. Any chink in any of our services across the piece will affect that. So we can't jeopardise that. Number two, with the MCS piece, they can come out and audit you. And it's there for a reason, which is to keep the standards up. We've learned from the solar installs, where it was the Wild West for a while. We've learned we've got to get a standard in there. So there's this independent body in there that's accrediting. But the thing you've got to get your head around with Octopus, which coming from a small, the business was, we were about 100 people, 10 million turnover. And it was all about, making enough money to make sure you can pay the troops, pay the guys. Octopus is coming from a very different place. We are investing for the medium term and trying to build a market. It's not about trying to make bottom line profit today. So that's one thing. It's about that higher purpose of building a platform that's big enough with enough installs to move the green transition. That takes a little bit getting your head round, because it's not about each install having to pay its way. Yeah, it's about a medium term plan. I think the second piece that you'll add is, the quality of the training that we do and the people that we've got. And the happiness of the customers at the end of this piece. You can't cut corners on a heat pump install, because it's got to be so precise. At the flow temperatures we're talking, there isn't a massive margin for error. There's some flexibility in there, but you've got to get it right. And I think that is the big difference, is that Octopus is investing for the medium term, and with the economies of scale that we've got. Because, I feel for these smaller installers, because they may be doing 1 or 2 installs a month, and they've got to make them work for them, make it pay. We're buying at scale. We're buying thousands of heat pumps. We're training thousands of engineers, and we can invest ahead of the profit growth, if you want to think of it in those terms, in the future. So I think, and the other piece is just go online and have a look at some of the satisfaction from some of the people who've got their heat pumps, and they'll tell you they're really, really happy.
Well, look at you. You're not, those days when the solar boom came, kind of 2012, where there was installations being thrown up on roofs that weren't even connected just to get the higher rate of feed-in tariff and that kind of thing. Those companies, they came and they went, but they were created to come and go. It was a vehicle to make a lot of money in a very short period of time and then disappear. And I don't think anybody could ever think that Octopus was in anywhere close to being in that world. You're here for the long term. You're investing heavily in the long term future, not just of Octopus, but of the energy sector in the UK as a whole. And as you say, you couldn't take the risk of doing lots of bad installations, but there is a strategy to what you're doing. The homes that you're targeting, they are homes that are let's say heat pump ready. I assume
See, but this is another one, Simon. And I read this. We're just picking off the simple installations. If you look at what the market that the housing stock that we're addressed, we think it's 75% of the UK housing stock. Whether it's an old house but it's got good insulation, doesn't matter. It's the heat loss that drives what we can install. So it's not like we're just picking off the really simple stuff. We're doing some pretty interesting designs as well. So which we've got to get to mass market, and the only way you can do that is to get a lot of installs going and to get some scale, and we've got to invest ahead of that curve. And let's be clear, the government's investing ahead of the curve with putting in the BUS grant, because we've got to do something to get down to net zero, because it isn't going to happen if we just let the osmotic market grow. Something's got to fuel it and push it, and that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, I would, some of the smaller installers that are out there, come and see some of our installs. Yeah, we'll share some, nothing we're doing is particularly secret in terms of how we go about doing it, but come and have a look. We want the market to grow, and we want to share some of those skills across the piece. And
there's still plenty of work out there. I mean, there's still 1.7 million boilers going in every year. There's plenty of work out there for certainly the contractors are out there at the moment. But where do you see, there's of those 1.7 million boilers that go in, that's a huge contributor towards the negative carbon emissions for us, and it's taken us in the wrong direction. And I would imagine a vast proportion of those are combi boilers. Boilers where, for those who don't know what a combi boiler is, boilers where there is no hot water storage in the homes, no hot water tank. And one of the requirements of the boiler upgrade scheme is that you have to implement somewhere in your home a hot water storage system. We've been trialing some stuff with the likes of Sunamp, where they do a hot water battery. It stands smaller than a kind of washing machine size, and everything's
It's anti-theft, because you wouldn't want to pick one up, would you?
Definitely wouldn't want to pick one up. You should see, we've got a sack barrow type thing that's like a robot made by a company called I forget the name now. But it's it walks up the stairs to carry the thing in place. This it's very, very heavy, but fantastic bit of kit. And big space saving. So that starts to address some of the challenges around putting a hot water cylinder in, with all the pipe work and plumbing and everything that comes with that. But has Octopus, there's obviously lowest hanging fruit here. You've got there's an abundance of inquiries, but is there any thought process as to where you go next into that combi market?
If I'm going to Slough tomorrow, and it's not often you get excited about going to Slough, let's be fair, unless you're a fan of The Office where they filmed it. But in there, we've got a load of our boffins who are doing a lot of research. And one of the solutions we're looking at is we're trying to look for different types of solutions for people who haven't got a space for a cylinder. And there is a lot of housing stock in the UK. I mentioned flats, classic example of where they don't have space for the cylinder. And we are looking at different solutions. I think Sunamp is one way to go. I also think maybe having a split system where you've got a small unit outside and maybe something inside. And I know there's a lot of people who are working on that sort of innovation. And The government, I think, has just put 10 million aside to try and help with that sort of the heat pump ready stuff. So I think, we're very much embracing that, and we want to get to as many homes as possible, and we will not rest on our laurels until we can tackle the full market. Now, the ones that we aren't tackling, which is where the smaller installer has still got a fantastic offer, is the real bespoke stuff. Where they might need daisy chains of heat pumps, they might need a lot of readiness activity in terms of insulation and all sorts. So it's a big program of, renovation. I think that market we probably won't look to tackle. And that is something that I think where a local installer can bring some value to the pie. You get that personal service, and they're going to customize and tailor stuff. And the price will suit that. But I do feel their pain that, some of the pricing that's out there, it's really tough. And what's going to happen, I think, is a lot of them are going to see that there's some bigger players in the market who've got really good sort of order books and come across and join us. We'll train you up, and that's going to be the new industry for years to come. And certainly people who are coming into the industry who are technically minded and engineers get into the renewables, because gas is going to dwindle. It's still a great business today, but it is going to dwindle over time. But our strategy is, don't ban boilers, because, Rishi has said now it's only 80% of gas boilers have got to go by 2035, and the oil boilers that were going to go in 2026 has now moved out to 2035 and only 80%. We're saying make heat pumps even more attractive, so you want to move to that rather than the other piece. The analogy, it's like, sort of trying to ban a BlackBerry when everyone's already on iPhones. That's how we want people to be thinking about the heat pump piece.
Nobody wants to be told what to do, do they?
Because you get backlash. As soon as you ban something, then people, are going to be reticent against it, and so there's going to be a backlash. And heat pumps are magical.
Yeah, we don't need prohibition for boilers, do we? There's like an underground boiler market going on.
So I think there is a bit of, I always try to look through this sort of consumer mindset, and I think I'm quite a good example. Prior to joining Octopus, I didn't really have any green tech, and then I went full Octopus in 3 months. I put in solar panels, got an EV charger, smart meter, put a heat pump in. And now I'm really interested. Now you shift and load balance and that whole piece. And I find it really, really interesting. But similarly, moving to mass market, which is where you're offering, HTO offering, you're thinking about energy as a service. A lot of people just don't care. They want to just go in and press a button and the magic just happens. It automates on the tariff and all that sort of good stuff. So I think you've got to understand who is buying it. And we had a lot of green warriors and really clued up people who knew so much about heat pumps in that first wave that are still coming through. But we're now, with this shift to you can do the right thing to the environment and the price, we're getting a lot more people coming through, asking a lot more simple and basic questions. And what we've got to do is, both as an industry and as Octopus, is answer those really truthfully and just advise them to decide if a heat pump's right for their house. Yeah,
so it's a different audience now, isn't it? You see, to see the transition of consumers coming to the table and the kind of questions they had. And I think now we actually get such a wide split, because you've still got the innovators, the early adopters, people who really want to understand that technology. And then I've mentioned him a couple of times on this show, you've got people like my brother who's just like, I really don't care. He's like, will it heat my house? Yeah. He's like, well, stop talking to me about it. He's like, just put it in. It's going to go outside of it.
We've heard the analogies in the previous shows you've had about, do you fret that much about exactly how your car works or how your fridge works? But some people do want the comfort of knowing, and one of the things that our sales guys do when we get some of these questions, and it's hopefully useful to some of your audience, is, do they work when it's cold? Is a common question we get. In the last cold snap that we had, it only went down to -10 in Aberdeen. So the coldest place in the country last year went to Aberdeen, went down to -10. And then you start looking at the Scandinavian stats, where 60% of buildings in Norway have got heat pumps, 43% in Sweden, 41% in Finland. And everyone goes, well, that gives me some comfort that other people, they must work. Because you can't put that many in and it doesn't function, right? So logic dictates. But it's the how does it work? And there's all these diagrams of the flowing pipes and all that stuff. And the one that I like is, when I used to go to the match, watch Middlesbrough in the 80s, we'd all be walking to the ground and we're all quite cold because we're all sort of disparate, and walking towards the ground, all in ones and twos. As soon as you got into the old gate and we're all bouncing up and down and, the EIO and all that good stuff, suddenly you're really warm. And it's simple physics. When molecules are flying around, air molecules, they've got energy, but it's all dispersed. Pump lots of air through your heat pump, compress it, condense it, the energy is together, creates heat, And that's how you do it. And that's always there. Yeah. However cold it is, there's still energy in those molecules. Yeah. And going the other way, you also have to provide the science, but that's where MCS comes in, that assures you that all the heat loss is calculated at the flow temperature for every room in the house, and they make sure that your design is going to make sure you get up to the temperature that you want. So you've also got the technical audience, and it's finding that balance. And the skill that we've found is, I've got a sales team, and they're sales with a very small s, because they're actually just advisors. I like to think of it like, when you go in an Apple shop and they tell you about the features and the benefits, but they don't push it. They just say, I've given you info. If you want to buy one, they're over there, go and get one. It's very much the same with us. You've got to work out what the audience is, what level of data and information they need, and steer them towards the answer.
Yeah, and having those different levels, if you need to go down into a more technical level, that you can do, and it's available to them for those who want it. Yeah. But if they just want to, this is, so we've literally just come out of a 6-month government-funded discovery program to develop a product called Energy as a Service, and essentially that product is where we would go into the home and we would fit a heat pump, solar and battery storage at no upfront cost to the customer, and they enter into essentially a maintenance contract, a service contract, where they pay for that system along with the service, maintenance and replacement parts, and over a 20-year period. So they're given 20 years of energy security, and the minute it's installed, as you imagine a package like that, their energy bills drop significantly, and they essentially pay for it from the savings that they make. But during that research that we've just completed, the audience that we found that was most appealing to is not an audience I've ever come across with heat pump systems. It was kind of people in their late 20s, early 30s, just bought their first home. I think the demographic of people thinking they're going to switch homes, every 5 years or whatever, that's not there now. So these people are thinking, I'm going to do this, put this in now. I know I'm good for the next 20 years. They're used to buying subscriptions with things. And so we came out of that accelerator program literally a few weeks back. And back in August, we launched our seed funding round as Heatio to raise the investment to go on and fund there's 350 installations that we've got to do. But we see that as the next step beyond boiler upgrade scheme. You know, that once that's gone, you're still going to have, solar's still not exactly the cheapest thing on the market. You can get finance options for it if you're eligible for them. But we think if you take an energy as a service package, wrapped it up over 20 years so the payments are relatively low. You can transfer the ownership. So if you do sell a house, it transfers to the new people. But at the center of this, and I think this is where it's really interesting seeing some of the things that are coming out of Octopus, especially some of the innovative tariffs that you've got. At the center of this, we would have the Heatio hub, which essentially monitors and optimizes this technology in the home, getting the running cost down to its absolute lowest. But then, and correct me if I'm wrong when I see this today, but the idea is that if we wanted to charge the battery up, logically most people think you charge your solar battery from solar. But we know you can charge that battery off the grid. And there is times of day, am I right in saying, where Octopus are actually not only just giving great energy for free, there's times of day when you can buy that energy and it's actually credited towards you.
There's lots of interesting things in there. I think number one is, it's great that there's companies like yours that are thinking ahead of the curve, because we're sort of getting people into the idea of getting pieces, solar, heat pump of that jigsaw. But the ability to have a one-stop shop where technology optimizes everything you've got in your house to keep your bills down. And it's got a financial element to it, because homes that have got that are going to be worth more money, going to be more desirable. And I've even heard that mortgage lenders might take the affordability piece, because your bills are low, into account when they're thinking about your mortgage rates. That might be something that happens. So I think that's going to be a real positive driver. And it's technology-led, which I love, because deep down I'm a techie. But if you go back to some of the tariffs that we're running, take the Cosy Octopus tariff. So we've got a specific heat pump tariff between 3 and 7 in the morning, 1 and 4 in the afternoon. You get cheap electricity. So when you want to heat up your water in the morning and when you want to heat up your house for the evening. And what people are doing is they set their timers to maybe heat their home to 23 degrees or 22.5 degrees for 4 o'clock. And then at the peak point, they turn it off, and then thermal coasting, it drifts down and keeps them warm.
Genius.
But The intelligent Octopus tariff, that gets 7.5p overnight rate between 11:30 and 5:30. So charging your car, but equally charging your solar battery and then running your house off the solar battery. Gets even more exciting. If you've got a bi-directional charger into your car, you've suddenly got an 80 kilowatt, not like a 10 kilowatt battery and you're off for solar. You've got an 80 kilowatt battery that you can use that as your little power plant to run your house or to top up with solar and then run your house. But actually, the ability for software to just take all that away and do it for you and just optimize it, move it all around, so you just know it's magically working, is the way we're going. And we've got some of the tariffs, we've got some of the technology, as in, heat pumps and home electrification stuff. But it's that home hub piece that talks to all the different devices and brings it together. Now, Cosy 6 is going to have some of that smart stuff, but I think more and more, particularly that generation you're talking about, are used to subscription models. I think there's a real opportunity there. And it's going to be a mixed portfolio. You're going to have some people who've just got heat pumps and solar, some just heat pumps, some people doing the energy as a service. But it's just, the future of that is just amazing, especially as, and you mentioned there about free. One of the things that's interesting, which I've only just recently found out, is if you look at the northeast of Norfolk, where all the wind turbine energy comes in from the Dogger Bank, sometimes they can't get it into the grid. Yeah, because there isn't enough ability to get the renewables into the grid. So you can get free energy in Norfolk. And that's the bit you're saying about getting credited back. Certain people, and at certain times, can get it credited back. And then you've got trackers that look at the energy price, and therefore it moves with the market, so you benefit with the market. And suddenly, it's like you need your own stockbroker placing all the different share options on to make sure you've got your portfolio balanced. And the right answer is forget that. Bit of technology just does it all for you.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be where the future's going. Because the big thing for us is we want more renewables in the network.
Yeah.
And we've currently got these horrible peaks, tea time. If indeed you still have tea time, you're doing the north. But tea time is when Coronation Street's on, about 7:30. Everyone turns the kettle on, everyone's eating their tea, and there's these two dirty big peaks. And they turn on coal-fired power stations just to satisfy that peak demand. But if you can start to get people to flex their energy use, so Octopus was at the forefront of this, that we've just launched something yesterday, I think, called Octopus, which is the ability to basically gain points for flexing your energy demand off peak times. So when it's peak, you turn off your electricity in your house, or you turn your heat pump down so that it thermal coasts, or you don't charge your car, and you can earn points. But the bit that's really interesting about that is when we did it, we got our best ever engagement was 92% engagement. People love all this, the idea of earning a bit of money.
Yeah.
And we turned off a city the size of Glasgow, as in moved enough energy out of that thing. They did it again. National Grid have now picked this up and done it nationally. And in the most recent one, they turned off half the homes in London, 1.8 gigawatts. If you can then start moving electricity around the grid, it means you can get more renewables in. And where it gets really exciting, because I studied geography, which is 12 parts of useless, but very interesting. You start looking at different countries around the world where you think to yourself, tough environment over there. They're suffering from some of the extreme weather events. Morocco, unfortunately, has just had the earthquake, for example. But they're really forward thinking in terms of what they utilise and what they've got. So they're building wind turbines and solar arrays out in the desert. The sun shines over there 18 hours a day, and the wind's constantly blowing. A guy who used to run Tesco's, the chairman, has built this business called Crosslinks, where they're building these massive interconnectors, which are huge pipes, cables, 4 of them, that are going to run from Morocco through the Bay of Biscay to Devon. And it's all right, they're going to go around the edge, around the continental shelf, so it's that much easier, obviously. But it's going to go into Devon. And that will mean during that peak period, we're getting the sun and the wind from Morocco pumped into the UK to meet that demand.
Wow.
And we've already got interconnectors to Belgium and Norway. And suddenly you start thinking about that bigger picture. And that is the Octopus mission, is that's how we're going to make the green energy transition. So you need to generate electricity. You need to be able to sell it on really smart tariffs. You need to have home electrification to decarbonise the home, solar and heat pumps. And you need smart tech to hold it together.
I think that, if there was ever an ending to a show that will hopefully entice people into the next episode, which is we're going to talk in some real detail about all those things, then I think that was it. I think you've nailed it. So thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for all your contributions. So join us next time where we'll be talking to Jim in more detail about the future of the energy market in the UK. Very excited by all accounts.
Thanks for having us.